live.
All right. Thank you everyone for coming. As Sarah mentioned, this is Lunch Function presented by TechSav. My name is Alicia Howell. I am Program Director at the Creative Coast. And we are going to have a great little chat ski with some tech entrepreneurs who are doing awesome things in our community. So, without further ado, we have Bob Shinn, founder at Candor. We have Susan Isaacs, who's founder at Paragon Design Group. We have Greg Kolovich, co-founder and chief medical officer at Micro-C Imaging. Did I say all the words right? Amazing. And Tommy Linstroth, who is CEO at Green Badger. So I want to start with some Twitter introductions. So Twitter length, tell us about your company and what stage you're at.
Candor is a IT and marketplace company bringing individuals, groups, insurance carriers, and brokers together in order to optimize the acquisition of health insurance for the individual. We raised just under $3 million. We're a little bit less than 2 years old, and hopefully really soon we're about to sign a $180 million contract to give us pretty serious revenue for the next 5 years.
Nice.
Paragon is a creative agency founded back in the Stone Ages, 2001, here in Savannah. My partners and I were SCAD comrades way back then. And we do branding, graphic design, but most of our work these days is focused on animation and all kinds of things web, generally not consumer facing, more proprietary for companies that are large and small. Now at this stage, a lot of Fortune 500 type companies. And I would say we're established at this point.
Finally.
Finally. Also still growing. The growth is more internal facing growth now, and we're doing a lot of things that I think are pretty cool in terms of refining how we run our business.
Super.
My name is Greg Kolovich. I'm the co-founder and chief medical officer of Micro-C Imaging. We created the first handheld x-ray for orthopedic surgery, and we raised about $7 million in less than 2 years. We're pre-Series A. We just had 5 seed rounds. We've got 5 patents with 30 claims. We're just now expanding to a new company called Oxos Medical. We're going to focus on digital imaging, 3D interoperative imaging, and we're going to do a lot of really cool things in a very short time. We're going to the AOS in Vegas, where we're going to start our pre-launch. And
awesome, that's great.
We've just done testing for FDA, which is an arduous process. It is a long, arduous process. So we're just now navigating through that. We're getting our initial testing for the FDA. We should have that locked up pretty soon, and then we can launch finally. Actually get revenue, which is good.
And we'll look forward to that. Okay, and finally, Tommy.
I'm Tommy. I'm founder of Green Badger, and we're a green construction compliance software. So you can think of us like a TurboTax for LEED certification for the construction industry. This is going on about our 4th year. Well, being in the market, we've got a couple hundred projects going on. We're working with 7 of the top 10 largest general contractors. So we've got some good adoption. We've been profitable for the last year, which is always a good thing. And now we're looking to just continue to grow and expand.
Fantastic. So you all are at very different stages, in very different industries. Can you tell us what's been your biggest challenge to getting to where you are?
Sure. You want me to start?
Anyone can jump in.
Well, I think the biggest challenge is when you have an idea and you've got to, take that idea from something in your head to something objective and permanent. And then you've got to get people to basically invest in you with just this idea and no revenue. And getting people to believe in, because in the beginning, like, you have family, friends, and fools who are investing in you, right? And they're mainly just investing in you because there's nothing, there's no prototype, or at least in my world, it was just an idea that I had. And I really think that's a special time because that to talk to that seed one investor and say, look, believe in me, I'm going to make this happen, and then to see it happen and unfold. That's the biggest thing. Is like believe in your idea and make it happen. But the biggest issue, the big obstacle, is making people believe in you. Because really, in the beginning, they're investing in you, not an established project.
What do you think was key to your being able to do that?
Well, I think you have to be credible. I mean, you have to be. You
have to be an orthopedic surgeon.
Well, that helps. That helps. But still, I mean, like many 85% of our investors are other orthopedic surgeons. So it's not like I'm. These are people in my same same skill set that are believing in me.
Yeah, makes sense.
And people who are a lot younger and a lot older that are doing it, investing in me. So I think if you've got credibility and you've got an idea and you've got vision and you've got, I don't know what you call it, swagger or personality or something, you've got what it takes to get those early investors and get the project going, then it sort of just snowballs and it becomes a lot easier. And you have to hit milestones. When you tell someone you're going to get something done, hit that milestone, because that is a huge deterrent when the investor's like, look, you told me this was going to happen and it didn't happen. They're probably not going to reinvest. So hit those milestones and be realistic and never ever exaggerate and never lie. I think we learned that time and time again from Theranos. But just be truthful, because ultimately my goal is, before anybody else, I want my investors to be happy. I want to give them back what they gave to me, and that was the belief in me.
Yeah, I think that's a big challenge to the Kickstarter model, like people making big promises and not following through. So yeah, that's a really good point.
Right. I'd echo that. I mean, that's the initial, right? That's getting going, that's taking your concept, but that same exact challenge exists when you're out in the marketplace. And now you've got the investors, now you've got to convince the customers, especially when you are doing something completely new. Like, I haven't seen a handheld X-ray before, how do I believe any of this is going to work? We have the same thing. People are they're not using a different technology. We're convincing them that we're better. It's not saying, oh, you guys are using Androids. We have an iPhone, and it's much more awesome, and they know what a phone is. Like, we are convincing hearts and minds. We're not the next Twitter or the next whatever, where we're doing something incrementally different. When we're convincing the mass that what they're doing, how they've been doing it, is not optimized, and there's a better approach, and there's a lot of changing hearts and minds versus even selling the product. It's more just changing their processes and something that's been internalized for a decade or 2 decades, and trying to push them into a more effective, efficient way of doing things.
Yeah, so how do you approach changing hearts and minds? It sounds like a difficult thing to do.
It is. I mean, we're in the construction industry, which is the lowest tech adopter of verticals, and so it's convincing people
that is statistically
the lowest investment in tech and IT. So it's convincing them to move off of Windows 95 and stop using Internet Explorer because it's not even supported by Microsoft, and then to use our technology. So there's a lot of education and a lot of there's just a lot of education before we even get into the sales cycle of what our product is, of just trying to provide a lot. We do a lot of resource provisioning, where we're just putting stuff out to help educate the market in general, and then drive them in. So it's an education converting into a sales process for us.
Yeah, and I know, Susan, and we've had conversations about your clients. I know education is a big part of your challenge. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. My company is a little different from these guys in that we're primarily a service company, so all we have to sell are hours. We entirely bootstrapped our company. We've been a company with no debt since we started, and it changes the way you run a business. It certainly makes you a lot more conservative about what you're willing to do, because it's your own money on the line, especially if you already have very little of it. So that really is a huge lens through which I look at how to operate my business. But because we started back when we did, and then we're talking about like a couple of SCAD kids knocking around in Savannah trying to tell people, hey, let us build you a website in 2001, when most people weren't even sure a website was something a business needed. So times have changed a little bit.
More changing hearts and minds.
But it was this like, let me explain what a website is. So it was very basic in terms of what we were doing, but it's exactly the same thing, educating, your potential client base. And we're still doing that today. It's a different kind of education. Now, we're working, a lot of what I do is inside sales inside of our client companies. And I'm working with people who have really tough jobs, and they are a lot of times the paperwork people, and they have no idea how to get the thing done that they're asking us to do. And so a lot of the time I'm sitting on the phone and trying to teach people, what success might mean for them, what the things are that they should care about in the process, what their outcomes realistically could look like. And so it's still that, and it's exactly what they've said. Like, people, it's still, after all this time, about people trusting us. We are an entirely referral-based business, and so people really have to like us to hire us. We are not a big, flashy New York agency, and we don't compete with those guys. We are the team you call who you don't mind showing them the inside of your underwear drawer, and we will not judge you, and we will help you figure out how to create something great. And that is it's not where we intended to go, but
you didn't intend to go to the underwear drawer.
Sometimes we would rather not be there, most of the time, but it happened organically because of who we are as people and the relationships that we developed, and we've kind of realized over time, somewhat begrudgingly, that that's a sweet spot for us. But it's all about relationships, and that is our bread and butter as a company.
Great. And I know, Bob, you're dealing with health insurance, which is something that we all deal with.
Yeah, we're a little bit different. I think they're totally correct. Integrity and credibility are absolutely important. With us, I would say, for me personally, it's been just relentless perseverance. There is right now an establishment in a way that's been things have been done since post World War II, and everybody wants to keep doing it that way, and the machine is having a hard time doing it. So we're more of, there is a dramatic need. All right, post World War II. Men came back from the war, certain jobs and things everybody thought only men could do. People wanted men, so they offered health insurance to men so that they would all come work there and then provide the families. When the reality was, before that, you didn't get your health insurance through your company. So now everybody does that, but since 2005, 90% of jobs are non-corporate jobs. So there's 40 million Americans who are out there right now, and they don't have good access to quality health insurance plans at a proper price, because they're all going at it as individuals and without the ability to integrate with the system. So you've got, if you don't make any money, you've got Medicaid. If you're retired, you've got Medicare. You work for a corporation, you've got your insurance through a corporation. But since 2005, 90% of jobs that have been created are non-corporate jobs. And that number is growing faster as a population than any other population in the country. But we don't have a mechanism to provide health insurance for people who make $75,000, $250,000, who are 26 to 44 years old. We don't have a mechanism to do that in this country. We've had some experiments and we've had some great learnings. So we're a little bit more of a movement, right? A dramatic
more changing
need.
hearts and minds.
Yeah, I would say from the carrier point of view, that's true. But really, it's much more. You've got 40 plus million people who live in the United States who just want to have access to health insurance and need it, and they can't get it, and they're frustrated and they're aggravated. 97% of Americans who do have health insurance don't know what it covers. Can you imagine that?
I'm among that group.
Can you imagine that? Look at this. One of your largest expenses on a monthly and annual basis, they're usually in the top 5.
Yep.
And
No
you don't
idea
know what it
what's
actually
covered
covers
and
or
what
does. And then they wonder why millennials don't choose to buy health insurance.
I'll give you a scarier thought. The doctors don't know what it costs either. They'll come in and say, how much it costs? I go, I don't know. there's no transparency. I totally agree.
Transparency is a problem. Inadequacy of coverage is a problem. Insufficient coverage is a problem. And we believe we can answer that, and we believe we have solved it. Now, what we need to do is get enough people that are out there in the world that are in that area to understand it, get them together, and together we can democratize health insurance and get the carriers to change. Because we'll have enough people to do it.
So these are, big sweeping challenges. You all, are operating from Savannah. What's been your biggest challenge in being based in Savannah? Let's start from the person who's been here the longest.
That's me. The challenge has changed over time. So the challenge initially was, and for, I would say a large slice of that 18 years, was that we really did not feel like we had cohorts, a community of people who understood what we were going through, who we could call, who we could collaborate with, and that's really tough. I don't know how anybody else feels about how they run their business, but there's a lot of stuff I feel like I understand really well. On a day-to-day basis, there's lots of stuff I just have no idea what I'm doing. And that's maybe not a cool thing to say, but it's part of the reason I still like my job is because I like learning new stuff and figuring stuff out. But you need people to help you do that. And so that was one of the challenges for a really long time. I think that's changed significantly in this town, thank God. There are lots of cool people like Eric and his company and lots of others who I feel like I can call if I need some help. The other challenge is aside from the resources, every company's like, I need more money to do more things. But one of the things that has been the case in Savannah, it is changing slowly, but I feel like we're 100 million miles away from where we need to be, is this is still not a town that's a yes town to startup companies. There are lots of places in the US where if you tell somebody you have an idea, their default is, okay, that's great. There are all these resources, and by default, I think it's cool you're doing this. I believe in you. I think you can do it. Of course, people, shake out of that. That's how it works. But this is still a town where the default is, yeah, talk to me in 5 years. Yeah. You're full of it.
Or we tried that 20 years ago.
Yeah,
and it didn't work.
We don't really believe in this idea that individuals with brilliant ideas can change the world. And I hope that changes for Savannah. It is changing. I wish it would happen faster, but I feel like that has been, if I can say specifically for Savannah, that's been the biggest thing. It does not affect us now because thankfully, like I said, we're pretty well established, and most of our work is not based in Savannah, but I meet people all the time with cool ideas for doing stuff, and I want them to succeed, and sometimes it doesn't succeed, and it breaks my heart because I think the only reason that didn't work is because you did it here, and I hate thinking that, and I wish it would change. So,
yeah, something for us all to think about and work on. Okay, who's been here the second longest, do you think?
Maybe 14 years, give or take.
All right, that's
So,
quite a long time.
I mean, I haven't been in the startup world that long. It was real estate, but even then, it was, we're the first cutting edge doing green development, and it was the same as Susan was saying. Why are you doing this? That sounds great. We're not going to do it. Good luck out there, and it's back to changing hearts and minds and education. More recently, echoing those points, but more recently, as I went through the whole startup journey, part of it was 5 years ago not having any of this. The Creative Coast was around, and it was one person in one office, and it was the infrastructure to help grow and foster what we were going through wasn't there. There were no, groups of us. There were no cohorts or things that I've experienced in some of the other cities that we've played around in. And it's like, all right, that would have been great. That was a challenge to sort of slog through this locally. And I know the two other gentlemen up here have raised a good bit of money, which is awesome. We've raised some, but when we go out to San Francisco or New York or even Atlanta or DC, it's like you could call 20 different investing partners like that. And here you talk to the two groups that are around, and it's like, okay, well, they pass because they only care about the things they care about. Where do you go from here? And there's just not, at least that we're aware of, that we've been able to experience a plethora, so to speak, of options to go and get an early stage group off the ground with local Savannah money. We've got to go regionally or we've got to go nationally to try and drum up those investors.
The problem with that is that what happens a lot of the time, because I've talked to other people about this, and you'll hear people say, well, I mean, at least you can go get the money. The problem is, when you take money from an investment firm in San Francisco, they're probably going to say, hey, we want you in our backyard. And so for Savannah, it's important that we develop those kinds of resources here so we can keep talent here and we can keep cool companies here.
I would echo what you guys said. I mean, I think there's a risk-averse mentality here. Most of our investment is not from Savannah, other than my surgical partners and stuff. But you're right; it is a lot easier to go to a big city, and that's sort of disheartening because there's a lot of money around here. There's people who retire here. There's people who were really successful and wherever they came from, and we need to pool those resources because I don't think it's an internal problem in Savannah. I think there's definitely a talent here. I found people just as talented as anywhere else, especially SCAD students and researchers and IT people and programmers. I mean, there's definitely a talent here. Plus, there's an advantage that we're right on the coast. We have a harbor. We're close to train, air, and ship. I mean, from a manufacturing standpoint, shipping products out is an ideal place because you've got all three. And you're right by I-95, which is a major artery on the eastern coast. So, I mean, I think internally, I don't think it's so much of a problem, but I think we do, as we grow, we need to probably, excite people a little bit more about the startup and get people out of that risk-averse mentality. And everyone wants to invest in real estate. That's kind of a boring. It'll make you money slowly, but it's just not it's.
Do you think there's a perception that that's a safe thing to invest in?
I mean, I've invested in real estate too. You make that 12% margin, which is great long term. But I mean, everybody wants to hit that home run. Invest in the Netflix. $1,000 in Netflix in 2007 would be worth $1 million?
Yeah.
So I mean,
I shudder to imagine. Well, if I were one of those people, I would be.
Maybe it was 97. It was a lot of money. But I guess in long term, I think we need to pool our resources and get people excited about startups in Savannah. I think that is our internal problem.
Yeah, and Bob, how long have you been in Savannah now?
A little less than a year.
Okay, so you're
and our office isn't even finished being built. All
right. So have you encountered any challenges being here so far that you might not in other places? So
we're a little bit different. I've raised money in the past and done different exits in the past, and my first round of raising, when you talk about credibility and stuff, I went back to the people who invested in me before who made money, and they were quicker to write checks because they're like, well, you made me money last time, so I'll do it again. I'll give you a third of what I got back from you last time, and I'll put that back in again. I'm still playing with house money kind of thing. So that was a lot of our initial raise. We came to Savannah by choice. We were located just north of Atlanta before. We looked at options. I don't want to go into too many details, but the basic gist is Georgia has laws where you can sell insurance across state lines that no other state in the country has. So that's just a little tidbit. Don't share that because I don't want more companies headquartered here.
Keep your competitors at
bay. So then it came down to where do you want to locate within Georgia, and we looked at a variety of things. Obviously, from a human resource point of view, there are more resources in Atlanta. From an investor perspective, the investors need to manage a lot, right? And we talk about the risk aversion. They're betting. If everybody in here wanted to get together and create a fund, we could all put in $10 a piece. We'd invest in a bunch of companies. And if one of those companies returned the back 1,000 plus return, we should all be happy because we made 10 times our money. That's how it works out, right? You want one of them to come back at 1,000 times, you make 10 times your money we put in, even though the other 9 or 90 failed. And that's what, that concept I think is the hard part for Savannah-based investors right now, is that there's not a vehicle. And in the US, there's a very similar situation, which was mutual funds versus the stock market. Before mutual funds, an individual US person could not get enough diversity in investment in the stock market. It was too much of a risk. After mutual funds came in, and a lot of retirement accounts and 401ks came in, you could put a certain amount of money and then it could be broken up, paired with a bunch of other people. You get enough money for proper investment, but your individual risk was diversified enough so you could do it. There's not a vehicle yet, and I'm hoping that CETA does something like that, where they start getting the idea that, hey, we want 1 out of 9 or 10 out of 9 to succeed versus 100% succeed. That's the mentality right now, and we've seen it before and seen it in other places. So we're a little bit different. We moved here. We said, SCAD, the resources coming out of there, and the fact that I think 96 or 97% of the graduates of the majors that we would want left. And they're making $90,000 a year in San Francisco right now. That's what SCAD graduates.
Pretty good health insurance.
With pretty good health insurance. That's what they're making graduating from SCAD. You look at like MIT and Harvard, and they have graduates not making that kind of money going places. Think about that for a second, right? Of what we have for resource in our backyard. But they're all leaving. They're not staying here. And they're going to San Francisco and they're thinking, hey, 90 grand a year, I'm great. Oh wait, I'm sharing my bedroom with 2 other people because I can't afford to live here. It's up to like 80-something% of the population in San Francisco can't afford to live in San Francisco anymore. Right?
Yeah,
That's a problem.
$150,000 is the poverty line. I read something the other week.
And so you've got a student coming out of SCAD saying, hey, I'm making $90,000. My dad, at the high point of his life, made $65,000. I'm starting ahead of them, and they go and they're $60,000 below the poverty line. Think about it. But if we could start to get a critical mass, this is starting to build a critical mass. We start to create a situation where maybe we start to fundraise as a group versus fundraise as individuals, and then that risk gets diversified. You get more and more into that group. You have some rules around that. That enables people to spread the money across, and we set the expectation, integrity and credibility from the beginning. They're looking for 1 in 10 to reach that number, versus trying to say that 1 and it's going to succeed. And I think that can start. Savannah does have a good section of money, but I wouldn't categorize Savannah money. When we looked at it here, we looked at Jacksonville, Charleston, and all the way up to Charlotte as really the greater area. And if you look at that area and the capability of that area, it is tremendous. And it could be rivaling Boulder or Austin type situation in a very short period of time. And I believe that can happen. And I don't think this startup is the last startup I ever do. Actually, I've already kind of been in conversations that if we move to the next stage that we're moving to, I plan to become part of the board and a strategic advisor. We're going to hire someone with a lot longer insurance background to be the primary runner of the operation of the company. And I will be doing that and starting my next thing. And that's just me perpetually always wanted to do that. I've had multiple exits. I've gone to work for Ericsson after they acquired one of my companies. I worked there for the 2-year earnout, and then I was gone. That's how it was. I can operate a big corporation, but it's not my preference.
That's a nice segue. So if you could, start a new company tomorrow, now having the knowledge that you all have gained from your current company, what might you do differently than you did the first time around?
For me, it's the problem that I always have is I get to pull back on the reins. My optimism, my enthusiasm, I want to charge forward. I've got to make sure that I'm more prepared before I take that next step. It's also the other side of that. It's also the reason why many people try to do what we're trying to do, and no one to succeed. And if you don't have unbelievable perseverance, then you're not gonna make it most of the time. But for me, it should be pull back, get these things really good, step forward, try to be focused. Right? Don't let yourself try to be too many things to too many people too quickly. Everybody thinks that if you diversify early, you've got a better chance for success. And the reality is that you don't get as successful. every time I've seen the major companies that work, I love the Airbnb case study. Most people don't know that Airbnb was around for 10 years before it was Airbnb. Everybody thinks it just was like this really fast growth engine. Airbnb was operating. The main investor that turned them around came in and met with them, and they had these market studies, and they paid for this analytics, and they had spent millions of dollars on these studies. And the investor looked at some of their reports and their statistics and said, I want you all to go here for the next 2 weeks. If you do that, I'll invest. They went to one Starbucks in New York, and they sat there, and they literally sat there all day, observing why this Starbucks had more people using the previous named version of Airbnb than anywhere else. And they learned that there was a guy there, literally a man, who was telling people how to use the app and what they were doing, and he was recommending it. And people were getting the bridge from what they thought was totally intuitive and made sense to them. And they paid for all these studies and this research groups and everything else. And no one had really put a finger on it. They went to that real life use, and they turned around and they created a version based off what that guy was doing. And they just did it for New York, for the people in that Starbucks. And they made it work for that one group. And then Airbnb became Airbnb.
All right. So rein it in and focus.
Absolutely.
All
It is
right.
hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
I think the fun thing about being a startup is you can always, hindsight's 2020. I mean,
Mhm.
everybody has, things they wish they could have done. I mean, I wish we would have started quality control from day one, but that's a huge thing in regulation, understand the regulatory pathway. But I can look back, if I do this again or my next project, or if I have to do more FDA regulation, I can go back with that knowledge, knowing that from day one we're documenting every single line, crossing our T's, dotting our I's. So I mean, that's the fun part, is you look back and say, well, I would have, but if I didn't do that, I wouldn't have learned. So it's a learning process for sure.
I mean, I would echo the same thing. I think we try to do, our internal joke in the company is that when we started, we offered basket weaving, so the backstory is that myself and a number of close friends, none of us are from Savannah, we were graduating from SCAD, there was nowhere for us to work here, but we all loved this town and we wanted to stay, and so we were like, well, we're smart and we're creative, we could just come together and start a company, and we all have these talents. I don't think anybody was basket weaving, but it was that varied in terms of like, how do you tell a story of like, here's what we do, and we can solder jewelry to get back together, and we can make you a website. Like, it was a hot mess. And also we had pretty quickly, when like you had to start putting pen to paper and coming up with a business plan and stuff, like people started dropping away because they needed to weave baskets. So we still, though, when we started, we wanted to do too many things, and I wish we'd learned earlier on to focus. I wish we'd learned early on to say no to a lot of stuff. No is like my favorite thing now. I've come to embrace it. I have come to embrace that, people may not like me for saying no, and that I can't please everyone, and that's tough for me because I was always a teacher's pet my whole life. And I'm all about the no these days. And but when you say no, it means you can really say yes to other things. And I enjoy getting to that point with certain things where I'm like, wow, I can really focus now, because I, did the hard bit of cutting away stuff that was a distraction. And I think that's really important, and I wish anybody who's starting a company would know that, like, you can't do everything. Pick the things that you can focus on, but also creating a startup, running a business this will be different for everyone. For me, it's like 1% sexy, 99% the grind. And people really like stuff that's Instagrammable. They don't like the paperwork and the contracts and proofreading and all of the really like boring stuff. That is the stuff that separates you from the pack over time. And if you are willing to put in the unsexy time, it pays off. And so I would advise people spend a little bit less time showing off and some more time like cleaning your house, keeping things organized, naming your files properly, backing your stuff up, making sure if you have partners, everyone has access to the passwords to things, stuff like that.
Yes. You said some very tweetable things there just then. Nice job.
If I was doing it over or the next time around, it would be have other co-founders. I did a sole founder, and it sounds glamorous, and you get to do everything you want to do. But as Susan just said, it's 99% crap out there a lot of times that you're grinding through. And to have a team when you're grinding through together, it's a lot better. Startups, you have your highs and you have your lows. And when you have your lows, it's good if somebody else is having their high to balance you out. And it also helps with things like investment. We've heard it 99 times that we don't have a technical co-founder and things like that. So doing it again, I'd spend more time identifying that team so that we were stronger sooner.
So is that right? You three all have a founding team that you worked with kind of from the very beginning?
It was funny. Yvonne, who was here a couple years ago, well, she's still here, but I remember
Sarah's Yvonne's sister, did you know?
Oh, no kidding. She gave me great advice one time, and I was just I was a nobody. I walked in, I was in here for a few months. I pitched her this idea in her, I think it was in her house, and she goes, what do I do? How do I get a CEO? She goes, you're not a CEO. You have to find one. I go, how do I do that? She goes, you have to trust the process and network. And then she said, you're going to be, and I thought, because I was an engineer, I'm going to be soldering wires together, making this thing. And you realize the whole thing is a grind. It's like getting, there's always someone younger and more talented and better looking that's going to do it better than you, And it's like you have to find that person. You're not it. I'm not it. He goes. She took one. I know her for 2 minutes. She's like, you're not a CEO. And I'm like, you're right. I'm not a CEO. I'm a doctor. I don't know what the hell about business. I think I'm business. But she told me that, and I found my CEO. And it took me one CEO to get to the next CEO. It is about finding people.
So here's a good question. What traits do you look for in someone you're partnering with? What makes a good co-founder?
You got to be like complete opposites. You have to have the yin and yang. You really do. You got to have somebody to balance you out, like you said. You're going to have a low when they have a high, and it really needs to balance you out.
I feel a little bit differently about that, but maybe that's because I don't really. I'm not judging my partners correctly. So I feel I'm a person who has, in general, not great luck in life, except in a couple areas. And one of the places where I have been luckiest in my life is my partners. I would get on a plane right now if one of them called me, needed something. I love them. And I wish I could say it's because I was really smart and strategic, and it's not. I came across these guys who had a very similar work ethic to me. We had different skill sets, but for us, we have the exact same moral compass. And so that is the foundation of how we run our company, is everything has to be 100% ethical all the time. And we would rather go out of business than cut corners and do things just in a dishonest way. And the thing though, and maybe our personalities are very different, and there are three of us, and we call ourselves the tricycle. And in our rule of thumb as partners is that if we're making a company decision, 2 out of 3 have to, well, it depends. There's certain things we have to unanimously agree on, but 2 out of 3 have to feel really strong that it's the right direction. And we don't have an ego issue. So the third person will say, you know what, I may not 100% get it or agree, but if you two feel strongly, let's do it. And tell me what I need to do to support your effort. And that's great. And we have, I am the eternal optimist, always, at Paragon. My partner Drew is the eternal pessimist. We call him our wet blanket. And my partner Phil is always in the middle, trying to keep mommy and daddy from killing each other. But it's a really great dynamic because it's hard to be optimistic sometimes when something blows up in your face. And that's when, the wet blanket comes over and says, you know what, great job. And I'm like, oh, the wet blanket thinks that was a good job. I feel pretty good about myself. And we have to talk each other off the ledge all the time. We're very type A people, all of us, and very particular. And I salute anybody who has gone anything alone, because I 100% don't think I would have survived this process without good partners. I just don't see how you do it.
Mm.
I like and I'm big on stories and analogies if you haven't noticed yet. You're driving down the road, there's a person on the side of the road, they're broken down, and they're just standing next to the car. Or you're driving down the road, and there's a person on the side of the road, and they're trying to push their car off the road, right? And they're trying to steer it and push it. Which one would you stop for? I would try to help the person that's trying to help themselves. So I believe in somewhat, I like Teddy Roosevelt and I like history. I believe in rugged individualism. But if you read a lot of Teddy Roosevelt, he'll also tell you that he does not believe that his success or anyone's success is completely on their own. Mm. That doesn't mean necessarily that the same people have to stay with you contiguously through. You had one CEO to get to the other, but I bet you if you didn't have that first one, you wouldn't have made the right choice on the next one. You wouldn't be where you are today. One of the hardest things to do, and one of the hardest things for me to do in my previous startup was realize that there was a time period that I no longer needed to run it. And I believe 100% that Apple, if Steve Jobs had stayed with it the whole time, it wouldn't be what it is today. I think he needed to step away for his own growth, and I think Apple needed him to be gone for their growth. Mm-hmm. I don't think that it was a mistake that he left, right? I think it was the right course. I don't believe I'm the right, perfect guy to run a multi-billion-dollar insurance company. That's not what I do. It's not what I want to do. It's not why I get up in the morning. I don't set my alarm. I haven't set my alarm. If I have a 6 a.m. flight, I'll set my alarm. But other than that, I don't set my alarm every day, right? And my son is always like, you get ready so fast in the morning. It's because I want to. But there are days like when you're on the road and you're trying to raise money and you're getting down to whether you're going to make payroll and all those other things, that it really wears you down. And I have some of the people that are involved in what we did, some of the board members, some advisory people, that I lean on different times. And you need those people to survive, without a doubt. I need them to survive, for sure. So I think at the end of the day, I love your team commitment and dynamics. We created a glass room in Cloud Silver Lining, and it was a glass comes from the middle of the whole office. We call it the non-office, but in the office for lack of digressing too much. And in there we had Muhammad Ali standing over Sonny Lister. I don't know if you're familiar with that. We had pugil sticks and giant boxing gloves, things like that. We believed in positive conflict. There are, in my opinion, positive and negative conflict. Positive conflict, Max and I have had positive conflict, in my opinion. Right?
In the 24 hours that you've been with each other.
Enough
That's amazing. Very possible with Max, I have to say.
And I've had negative conflict with people too, right? But I will push buttons. I will challenge people, and I expect people to challenge me back. But once you make that decision as a team, whether you liked it or not, or whatever else, everybody's job is to make sure it succeeds. And if you don't have that, you're not really a team. Mm. That's the key thing. You can disagree, you can argue, you can do whatever you want. You behind closed doors, you can put on giant boxing gloves and hit each other, whatever it takes. But as soon as you go forward, if everybody's not in, that person needs to be off.
Mm. So your advice to Tommy, if you could go back
and
find
a
that
co-founder right now.
Yeah.
I would absolutely, and find one that is anchored in one of the areas where you can raise money from. Even if it's a CTO, advisor, type person that you can somehow make part of the team, even if they're not full-time, you give them some advisory shares to be there for stuff, I would add them to the team. Someone that has connections and network to complement what you have outside the city, for sure.
Awesome.
But you have to have the founders that have the immense passion and commitment, right? For sure. You had to change CEOs, but you're the constant.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a lot of people in the past 2 years, but like you said, I mean, I think you have to build yourself around your people. That's as simple as that. And if someone's not on board, you got to cut that weight.
It's hard to do, but you got to.
I've fired a few people before. It sucks, but maybe you know.
I got a great piece of advice from a banker friend one time after I had to let someone go and it broke my heart. And, you know, I liked the person a lot and they weren't performing and I did everything I could. And that's the stuff that I really struggle with because I just think, we'll be friends forever. And for the most part, it's been great. My team has been the same team for most of our time together. But he called me, which was very sweet of him, this is actually a client, by the way, so really, he did not need to do this, but he called me to say, hey, so I know this person's gone, how are you doing? And I said, I'm fine, why are you calling? And he said, I know you well enough, I just want to check on you. And I said, well, I'm bummed out about it, but I think it was the right thing to do. And he said, tell me honestly, should you have fired them 6 months ago? I said, probably. And he said, I'll tell you, after having to fire, dozens and dozens of people over my career, every single time without fail, I always thought, I should have done that 6 months sooner. And so I don't know how to incorporate that into where I run my business, but I'm trying to be more proactive and doing things sooner.
I fired someone on Valentine's Day once. That was bad. I look at the counter like, it's never fun. But like I said, it's not personal. It's just it's business. Unfortunately, it's not personal.
So let's hear about kind of your plans for 2019 and what success looks like for your companies.
I can start if you want to go touch it. For us, we are going massive growth, or we will have very little left and we'll be selling off a lot of IP. Right? We're taking on just a project that is way beyond our capability to deliver, and we're going to find a way to make it happen. If you look
Aim high, dream big.
Well, we got into this, and I got into this, right? To really make a massive impact, not only financially for us, but also in this industry. And we're going to swing for it. And if we fail, we're going to fail. And if we succeed, if you look at similar companies, there's a lot of different companies. You can look at Zenefits or Esurance or Progressive. When they get to about 10,000 policies issued, they got $1 billion valuation. When they were marketplace, they hit on 10,000 policies. We have a contract to do 100,000 policies over the next 18 months. Right, so we're either going to be really big, or I'm going to be dead.
Well, I know what my preference would be.
Does your company do life insurance policy?
You gotta jack that up a little bit.
We had one investor that said, I'm in, I'll give you 15 to 60 as long as you meet these different goals for tranches through what you do, but you have to have a $20 million life policy on bottom. And if you don't, I'm not in. And we went through the whole process, and it was almost $1 million a year in premiums to do it.
Yeah.
We ended up having to walk away from it. My health is not great, which is one of the reasons why I'm motivated to do this for people.
All right, any more goals? What's up?
So for my company, we've reached a nice place as a company where on the personal side, I feel like, okay, we know how to do a company, so now that we have checked that box, we feel comfortable taking risks. But the risks we're taking might seem very boring, but they're all risks on like tweaking all the valve settings and like, we've always done that constantly, like refining our processes and how we can be more efficient and, you know, do better quality control and just like all of that sort of thing. But now we're getting a bit more experimental with that and seeing like, what if we unplug these parts entirely and swap new parts, and not in terms of like people, but in terms of the way we do, you know, the way we deliver things to clients, the way we solve problems internally. And so we'll see how it pans out. But last year, you know, we've been in a comfortable place for a while now, but the thing I don't like about being in a comfortable place is that it's so boring. And I would rather just do something else if it's boring. And so then you start thinking, well, what does that mean? Do I like just start something else, or do I like try to grow, or, which, you know, we are trying to grow, but it has to be interesting for the three of us partners, and we want to take care of our people as well, but we have to still want to do it. And we want also to have personal flexibility to experiment as well. So one of my partners teaches some of the time, not some of the time, he teaches every week, but he teaches at a college as well because he wanted a new challenge mixed in there, and you know, he never taught before, and that seemed like something new and hard, and so I think that when we get to a space where we can create a bit of freedom in that way, it makes our work better, because then we take creative risks as well, which for the stuff that I would not probably want you taking creative risks with what you're doing, or you probably either. But in what we do, you know, we're creating things for people that are meant to be creative and not formulaic, and everything we do is completely custom to our clients, and so it's nice to start interjecting new ideas and energy, because it means that then the things that we innovate for clients end up being much more interesting. And so that's where we are, and I'm kind of excited. We're not, you know, $1 billion valuation destined, but
I could be at your door looking for a job in a month. So
I think for us, it's exciting because we have prototypes, we have device, we want to use it on patients, but we just can't because of the FDA. When the FDA, we get that 510K clearance within the next few months, we're going to have it in the hands of surgeons. And we have 6 initial doctors that are going to use it while we tweak it, because you can use your own FDA to rewrite it again. And then at that point, we've sort of boxed out micro-C imaging into this device, that because there's so many big companies that want to probably buy it. But we've got all this talent that we've spun off on these other projects that are all aligned with enhancing images and changing the face of the OR. So we started this new company called Oxos Medical, which is based in Atlanta. And now we've given the micro-C under the Oxos umbrella, where we can actually have the freedom to start branching off and really looking at some templating, some 3D design. We're going to basically rebuild the OR where there's the robot doing the imaging for you, and it's going to be based on the surgeon's preferences. And you're going to start importing the EMR into that. It's really exciting stuff. And this is sort of my vision coming through. Like, I'll never have to depend on a person pushing a large X-ray machine in the middle of the OR again, because my robot will do it for me. And it'll know exactly my preferences. And then we think that's a future. We think that's $1 billion company. We think our handheld X-ray is a multi-million-dollar company.
handheld X-ray is $1 billion company.
I'm conservative, but we need to get the 220. You asked about goals. We need to get 225 users. We've got 900 people who want to buy it tomorrow, including veterinarians. So what we want to do is be realistic. You know, understand that, you know, there's going to be a certain subset of people who are going to use it. We get to that number, and then we start spinning off. We make a veterinarian one. We make one for international medicine. We make one for who knows. But ultimately, we want to take our IP, our intellectual property, and this untethered imaging, where we have 3-dimensional imaging in the OR, and spin it off to changing the design of the OR.
Exciting stuff. I know you've been waiting on your FDA for a while, so that'll be cool to see.
Grinding through it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just glad we don't have any regulatory agencies we have to deal with. That's absolutely terrible. Success for me we've all never had to go through that whole process. We're just going to continue to try rocket sales and go from our user group and really push into enterprise adoption, because we're getting on the cusp, and once we start getting that enterprise adoption, life just gets pretty sweet. So we're hoping we can get those first couple of customers this year.
Awesome, exciting for all of you. I have a final question. Jen will shoot me if I don't ask. So, what can the Creative Coast and TechSav and CETA and other organizations do to aid you on your journey in your business?
I think the fund idea is the key. I think getting to the point where there is an understanding of diversifying that risk so that the risk is looked at as a whole of a bunch of companies instead of individual success or failures. Getting people to understand that, create that fund, and then be able to do a variety of different types of investments, whether it's just someone who's swinging the fences like me, or someone who's producing a great, stable, reliable, good quality company inside the area, right? You want that variety. And you want to
do not
enable
want
those people.
Susan to go anywhere.
No, right? So we want her to groom her successor, and then her to start something next, or to make that a division of a bigger company, right? So she's not bored, because sometimes when we're bored, we're our worst enemies.
That's right.
Right? I think that is the key. I mean, you just come in Creative Coast from the first time I walked in less than a year ago to now, and this space, and the painting, and the stuff, right? I mean, just
stop.
It's different in less. I would say in months. It's made dramatic changes. I think if you can create so there's a process for some of these people to be able to. Maybe they don't get to make it an income. By the way, if you're ever raising money and anything on your list is about you getting your salary as part of the package, most VCs will shut you down immediately. They're not here to fund your salary while you build the company, right? Just know that. But if you need money to help make your idea work, or to scale your idea, or deliver on potential sales, those are things that they invest in. So, but to enable all the people that want to be able to do what they need to do, either help them come up with the first prototype and pay for that, or to give them, rent office space for a period where they need to work, or help them get to the customers, or mentoring, or all the other things that are required to make it happen. I think getting that fund together is the step to change us from what we are, which is pretty good compared to where we were, to getting to that Austin or Boulder level type place.
And I'd echo that too, and I had the same thought. CETA, for 14 years that I've been here, they're going out trying to attract other people to come here when they could foster what's here. We could go and hire 1,000 people and bring them here ourselves if our companies collectively in this room were all taking off. So it's like this what we talked about from the beginning is a different mindset that we've had in Savannah than what you could have. We don't want any of us to go leave and take our employees and our businesses to Atlanta or anywhere else. That fund investing locally in local talent to foster local ideas and grow the local economy rather than trying to coerce people to come and move here seems a win-win from an economic development perspective.
I will say that while it is a small community, there is an advantage to that. It's easier to be a big fish in a smaller pond. And like your sister Yvonne was great to me. She told me what I needed to do. I didn't have a clue what to do. I really am grateful to her. And Blake and all the new guys when I was there, I didn't know I knew I had an idea. I knew I could change what I do and make my life easier and orthopedic surgery easier, but I didn't know how to do it. And there's no book. I read all the books she told me to read, and I did all things, but there's still no manual. So having someone sit down with you and sort of map out the early way to go, and believe in you, really, honestly, I think they believed in me, and that was important. And I don't think I would have gotten that if I was in Atlanta or New York. I probably wouldn't have got there. So there is an advantage. You can't think of it all as we live in this small town and poor us. I mean, think of it positively. I mean, I think the Creative Coast and Tech Savannah have been nothing but kind. The ATDC has been great. So I'm thankful for that.
We don't want you to go anywhere either.
I'm not leaving. I bought a house. I'm here.
You're in the real estate market now.
I invested.